Welcome back to another reading and correcting of A Wasteful Death. With me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. Today, we are doing Chapter 14. As a predator, Aiden had relatively few surviving relatives. Marlot discovered after doing a search. Of 8 siblings, only 1 brother and 2 sisters were still living. Her mother had died giving birth to the youngest, a daughter, who got sick and died when she was 2. The other 3 died in accident, all unrelated. They seemed to be a family of risk-prone individual, which could explain how Aiden had become so successful. Her father's name was Sarlo, and Marlot had to drive through one of the poorer part of the city, close to one of the commercial district, to reach his house. The house was in need of repair. Many of the gray bricks were cracked and crumbling, and the porch step of the 2-bedroom house were rotten. Marlot carefully climbed them and knocked on the bare wood door. The door swung open hard enough. Marlot took a step back, worried it would come off its hinges. What? Cheetah glared at him. He was wearing dirty shorts and a filthy shirt, and foul scents from the house drifted around him. "I'm registered investigator Marlowe Blackclaw," he said, fighting to keep his nose from wrinkling. "I'm investigating your daughter's death. I'd like to ask you a few questions." "Yeah? Why would I want to answer them?" Cheetah's breath stank. Marlowe raised an eyebrow, his ears canting. "It could help us close the case. The quicker that happens, the faster you get survivor's benefit." That would be a possessive. He started. "You say that like I'm getting anything. You don't know anything about her. I kept a roof over her head, clothes on her back, and hunted for her all the way until she got one of those corporations to give her enough money for her education so she could move out. You know what she told me on that day? That I was a lazy, good-for-nothing father. So, no, I'm not getting any of that money. So you can go fuck yourself and your questions." Vegeta slammed the door shut. Marlowe stared at the closed door, surprised at the rancor in the male's voice. He hadn't considered Aiden might have changed who her beneficiaries were. The default was for them to go to her closest relatives, mates, children, then father, mothers, and siblings. But that could be changed, so who was her beneficiary? He pulled out his pad and as he stepped down the porch and almost put his foot through one of the holes in the first step. He grabbed a post to keep from falling, and his hand came away with old paint and rotting wood. Quickly and carefully moved away from the house, now worried it might fall on him. He made his way. I actually utterly forgot about this scene. I did not even remember that was there. He made it to his car and called up Aiden's tax record. He had to search through them to find the information. He'd never needed to look into the beneficiaries before. The tax system wasn't simple to navigate. When he did find the upper section, he was surprised to find she hadn't changed anything. Why hadn't she? If her father's belief were accurate, she should have. Based on what Marlowe knew of her, she was meticulous enough that she would have made the changes if she didn't want her father to get anything. Unless she didn't know she could. Not everyone knew the beneficiaries could be modified. Marlowe himself hadn't known until it was covered in his investigation course. This meant her father would be getting a large sum once the case closed. He looked up at the house. He clearly needed the money, and the clothing could have been a mask to make Marlowe think he was too much of a slob to pull off something like that. Marlowe had trouble believing that. The scents in the house weren't recent. He doubted the house had been cleaned in weeks, if not longer. Still, he sent Sarlot's name to the enforcer and asked for a report on his movement over the last 2 weeks. If any of his transaction placed him close to Aiden, Marlot would come back to have another talk with him. He was back in his car when he realized her father might not be the only one to receive benefits. She was mated, and unless the contract specified otherwise, her mate automatically became the primary beneficiary. He pulled up Aiden and Alacon's mating contract. It was an open contract that would be fulfilled once Alacon Took possession of his child. Then Marlot checked the benefits. Nothing had been modified. Alicon, not Sarlo, would be the recipient. Alicon was certainly in a position to make a death happen. But why? He was worth much more than Aiden. His company was successful and well positioned in the market. He pulled up Sharptooth's Pharma public financial records and looked through them quickly. Everything looks fine. He'd reported profits in the last reports, but wasn't a financial. They'd reported profits in the financial report, but he wasn't a financial expert. He sent the question to the enforcer's financial division for a check on the company. Maybe Alicon was hiding financial trouble and needed the money Aiden's death would bring. The amount would be substantial, but it couldn't be enough to pull such a large company out of trouble, could it? Once he had the financial result, he might have a better idea. In the meantime, he tracked down the rest of Aiden's family. Her brother, Jicker, lived in an affluent neighborhood. Why is that? In an affluent neighborhood with his mate and 3 daughters. He had nothing to offer about Aiden. It had been a few years since he'd last seen her. He didn't know of anyone who might want to hurt her, but he recommended Marlot speak to Litara, their sister. Apparently, she and Aiden had been close while growing up. The drive to Litara's residence took Marlot to another of the older neighborhood. This one filled with old shops. He stopped at the address and looked around in confusion. It was a garage, obviously as old as the other buildings, if better maintained. He checked his information and confirmed that this was where Litara lived. He pulled out her public information again and looked at it more thoroughly. She was an artist, though he couldn't tell how successful from what was available to the public. He couldn't use his ID to get her tax-related information since she wasn't his case. He supposed artists were a sufficiently eccentric group that it was normal for one to live in a garage. The rolled-up door was open. The sound of grinding came from within. Looking into the darker space, it took him a moment to see more than the sparks flying in the center of the room. When his eyes adjusted to the light, he saw someone wearing a bulky apron over thick clothing. He waited for the person to pause, then called out, "Excuse me." She looked over her shoulder and pulled up her mask. Her black spotted fur was matted with sweat. "If you're looking to get a commission, you have to send me your request like everyone else. I'm too backed up to talk. I'm too backed up to talk it over, so don't waste your breath." He pulled out his ID. "I'm registered investigator Marlo Blacklaw. I'm investigating your sister's death. Can I talk with you for a moment?" She looked back at the metal sheet. Marlo studied it. She had been grinding a long strip in it, next to 2 others. Thought they might represent claw marks. Marlo tried to see the appeal, but he wasn't into art. He much preferred looking at a well-made piece of technology. Turned off the grinder, set it down, and put her mask next to it. "Okay, but I can't take long. I need to finish this piece by the end of the day." Marlo didn't ask what it was supposed to be. "Your brother, Jecker, said you and Aiden were close growing up?" She pulled a water bottle from a cooler. "Yeah, that surprised a lot of people at the academy. She was always driven to work for one of the pharmas, while me," she looked over her shoulder at the metal sheet, "I wasn't." "Did she raise a lot of hackles?" "Aiden?" She chuckled. "Yeah, she could. If you stayed out of her way, she didn't care about you. Probably didn't even know you existed, but if you got in her way, she just walked right over you." "Anyone in particular come to mind?" "No, sorry. I saw the wreckage she caused, but I didn't really care about it. Eden didn't care. She always had her eyes on the prey, not the bystanders. By the time she started advanced studies, she had a dozen pharma wanting to pay for them." She took a long swallow from her bottle. "You can't be thinking someone from Bag Van killed her." "I'm looking at all the possibilities. You never know who might decide to hunt whom." Come on, we were kids. Scrapes and ripped furs are part of growing up and testing our limits. I don't see any one of us keeping score." Marlot nodded. The academy he'd gone to was much smaller, but he acknowledged she made a good point. There had been a few students at his academy who had pushed through everyone else to be the first to succeed. He didn't hold anything against them. "How about males? When heat hit, how did she react? But the terrified him. That almost destroyed her plans. For about 2 months, all she could think about were males. She spent her time at the gym, and they were more than happy to, she sighed, take advantage of her. Did they force themselves on her? No, but that's because she was more than willing to submit to whatever they did to her. I tried to convince her to take it slow, but she wouldn't listen to me. Her heat controlled her. Her scores dropped a lot in those 2 months. When that registered, she went rabid. She tried to chase all the males away, but she liked the sex too much. So she kept up her activities, but made sure she was in charge. She limited her fun to one male who had enough energy to satisfy her. She nodded. She never stopped, did she? Itara shook her head. She tried to stick to male her age, but they couldn't keep up with her. Thank you for your time. If you haven't yet, look at her lovers. The way she treated them. You can't have been happy once she discarded them. We are. He turned and laughed. The little sister didn't have anything new to contribute. Like Jekker, she hadn't seen Aiden in years. His pad beeped. He pulled it out. I'm done, he said, sounding tired. How'd it go? You'll be happy to know I didn't eat her, although I was tempted. That bad. She just won't hear what I'm saying. I mean, I get she's in a bind, but the system can't take into account everyone's insecurities. It would fall apart. We've got counselors to help people like her, but she won't see one. She wants the rest of us to accommodate her problems instead. You did all you could. It isn't your problem anymore. Except she's going to call in a few days, and I'm going to have to go over it again. He sighed. I need a drink. How about you come pick me up and we go back to my place for one? Marlot opened his mouth to say yes, but saw the time. I can't. I have to meet the MPB agent at my freezer. How about after? Marlot sighed and felt his stomach twist in a knot. I'm taking Telema to Jack's Cuss clinic afterward to see his cub. He prepared himself for Trembor's chiding. A silent stretch. Do you want me to meet you there? It shouldn't take me long to drive there once I have my car. Marlot closed his eyes. He shouldn't. He knew his lion didn't prove what Marlot was intending. Put him in a position where he shouldn't put him in this position. Didn't want to do this alone. Really didn't want to. I'd like it if you could. I'll be there at 6. I'll see you then. I love you. Marlot opened his mouth to say it, but his voice caught in his throat. I'll see you then, was all he was able to get out. This concludes chapter 14 of A Wasteful Death. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story as well as the others in the series, they are available on all major e-retailer. If you want to support me, that's on my Patreon, where you can also get access to just about everything I've written. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.